Well, hello everybody. So let's welcome to the next level for connectivity for industries and society panel. So just for warm up, I would like to check if all of you have already downloaded the app, please, because we have some questions and ask and votes to do at the beginning of the session. So I would appreciate if you please download the app, check in the option of ask and vote, and try to make one of the elections about the different options that you have in your questions. So they should appear here now. So how many people has the app downloaded? Can you wave your hand? OK, good. So I think we will go pretty straightforward. Good. In the meantime, I introduce myself. I am Sergi Figuerola, the moderator from today's panel. I am working from the I2CAT Foundation, which is a research and innovation center, and I am the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer on this organization. So let's see if the pool is appearing here in the panel. Let's check. So we have the first question that actually you have in the pool when you go to the session that we are hosting today is, where do you work? Obviously, it's not related to 5G. It's basically to get some statistics. So let's see. Wow. OK. So it seems that we have an equal participation of government and private sector so far. Changing. OK, a few seconds more. OK. Good. I don't know for how long will it last, but I think that we are almost to see the voting. OK, perfect. So private sector is the winner so far, which is good. And now we have another question that please would appreciate if you can also now answer as fast as possible in order we proceed with the session. The question is, how familiar are you with the topic that will be discussed in this session today? So hopefully now, yes wins. At least that you are somehow not expert maybe, but at least familiar. Well, we still have any people that has no prior knowledge, which is a challenge for the panelists we have today in order to convince them that at least 5G is going to be a game changer, which is quite good too. I'm very few experts. It makes the job easy for me. So I don't will be into a complicated situation, which is good too. OK. Perfect. Finishing. So 65% of people has good knowledge of what we are doing, which is very good on the way that we will proceed. Obviously, also on the questions that we will make. So remember also, please, that you can make questions for the panelists that later on I will gather and I will choose the ones which are most voted. So I also have some questions for the panelists, but I will address some of your questions too in order to be sure that your opinion is also considered on the panel. Thanks. OK, good. Thank you. So I mean, obviously, you didn't come here to listen to me. You came here to listen to the speaker and the panelists. But I only wanted to make you mention about the few points in order to center the discussion. Basically, 5G is coming, and cities are dense places. But in the end, we are also looking quality of life too. So the question is, what's the situation? What 5G will bring also in terms of quality of life? Will it change the way that we are living in the cities? 5G is promising many things. It's going to be faster, cheaper, better than its predecessors. And at the same time, it's providing convergence between what would be the wireline, wireless LAN, wireless networks, and also the satellite networks. So at some point, we could also say that we have reached the convergence situation where the IT meets the network. And it will open up new possibilities, new business, new opportunities, something that we have to take into account. I would also say that 5G will also be the foundation for larger scale IoT deployment in cities. In fact, I would say that it would be also a revolution. We expect that 20 billion devices will be connected to mobile networks by 2020. And we are nowadays in 8 billion devices. So you can see the exponential growth that is forthcoming in the next years. Then also another question that we may address is what the future, the next cities, the future cities will look like with 5G. We'll have cars, buildings, people, many devices, all communicating to each other. So what's going to happen up to that? So will in the end 5G be the enabler that will facilitate the fact that we'll have a reduced commute time, that we will also improve the public safety? So there are many questions and issues that I expect that some of them will be exposed today in the panel that we have, and at least you will get some questions. In the end, this is the challenge, isn't it? So then also another important thing is that cities will provide for the first time ever real-time services. And this is a new situation that we have to face. I mean, I would even say that there will be many applications that we don't even yet know. So this is the interesting thing on the innovation that will drive 5G. The fact that there will be many, many opportunities, business model, or new applications that we are not yet conscious about the capabilities that the fact of having low latency, real time, will provide into the cities itself. In fact, there are some statistics and figures that I have also noted. The fact that the 5G subscribers by 2019 is expected that they will have an average monthly traffic of 12 gigabytes, and it will grow up to 85 gigabytes by 2028, which is like an increase, a huge increase of traffic loads. And at the end, the issue is that if these statistics really happen, obviously what's going to happen with 4G networks? They will not be able to be alive anymore with this big amount of traffic demands that we'll have in the users. So in the end, the question would be that maybe Netflix would be the next king. Who knows? But obviously, the video content is supposed to be 90% of the volume of all this traffic. So believe me that things will change somehow. Also, it's expected that telecom operators may invest approximately around 300 billion in infrastructure in the next years. It's expected also 22 million jobs created by 2030. And also the fact that by 2025, it is expected that 57% of the global wireless media revenues will be generated by 5G networks and devices and the services that they provide. In the end, 5G is a joint effort. And when I say a joint effort, it's a question of a public-private partnerships agreements between different parties. And also, I wanted to also take the chance the fact that here in Barcelona, we have created the 5G Barcelona initiative, which in the end is a public-private partnership initiative in order to empower and to strengthen the implementation of 5G technologies, which is a consortium managed by the Mobile World Capital, which has links with the GSMA and also with the Mobile Congress, with the Catalan government, with the City Council of Barcelona, and it's putting together for the first time the 4 key research centers from the region which are dealing with 5G technologies, which is I2CAT, CTTC, UPC, and Atos. So in the end, what we want with this initiative is to be able on how we manage to convert the metropolitan area of Barcelona in an open, neutral, city-wide lab. So the idea is that we want people, we want you, we want companies, institutions, to validate the technologies on the city itself, and to be sure that we can also provide a showroom on how these verticals work, and later on to be shown maybe at the Mobile World Capital. So in the end, we are doing many things. I think that I have exposed maybe some of the questions that I expect that the panelists will answer with the presentations that they will do today. But as I said, feel free to answer any question you have, use the app, and later on we will come to the questions. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the first panelist that we have. Actually, it's a person that I know very well. We have been working for a long time already. So let me introduce to Bernard Barani. Bernard Barani is currently the Deputy Head of the Unit from Future Connectivity Systems at the European Commission. He's leading the implementation of the 5G public-private partnership and supports the 5G action plan for Europe. So the title of the speech is going to be 5G for Europe. And the presentation will outline, I think, how Europe, the European Commission, basically is trying to target this strategy and see how you are able to, with all together, strengthen the 5G empowerment. Okay? Thank you very much, Bernard.
Thanks a lot, Sergi, and many thanks for the kind introduction, and also many thanks for the kind invitation to European Commission speakers to try to tell you what it is that we are doing in 5G these days, and how we try to, it doesn't come out. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, voilà. Voilà, sorry for the technicalities. So I try to explain to you what it is that we do in the European Commission in the context of 5G, and just to give you a flavor, we started at the level of the Commission to work on 5G around 2013, 2012 actually. We started to have the first reflection on 5G, and in 2013 we launched a so-called public-private partnership with the industry, with an industry association that sort of represents the major actors of telecoms in Europe. This is an initiative that, into which we injected 700 million euros, which is basically aimed at, let's say, deploying the supply side. That means deploying or let's say developing the technology with European actors, supporting the deployment of 5G technology from a European perspective. Now in 2016, we launched another initiative called the 5G Action Plan. And in this 5G Action Plan, we try to put in place the framework conditions for Europe to deploy 5G. That means that at this time, we kind of realized that 5G is actually moving much faster than previous generations, and that there are already quite ambitious deployment plans all over the world, which means that we felt that it was needed for Europe to shift the gear up and to move forward in trying to incentivize 5G deployment on European territory. So why do we think that 5G is important? And this is a picture that we developed with industry and with a couple of stakeholders in Europe, because we believe that 5G is not only 4G plus 1, but it's really something that has the power to really support the digitization of the economy. So we see this as a platform which can help and support quite a large number of vertical companies or vertical industries to integrate digital into their business process and into their value chain in such a way that they become true digital companies with digital business processes. And we believe that 5G is a nice platform to do that. So 5G does not provide only additional bit rate. So we are moving from 1 gigabit per second on the carrier in, let's say, the 4G era. Now we talk about more than 10 gigabit per second. So this is a traditional broadband business of the operators. But because of other characteristics of 5G, such as very low latency or capability of supporting very large amount of device or very large amount of device in a limited over a limited area, there are quite a few new applications which are becoming possible, which were not necessarily possible with previous technologies. So we made quite some extensive studies with several sectors, energy, factories, and for each of these sectors, we identified a use case, digital use case, that would push the technology and would require additional characteristics compared to what 4G provides. And this is sort of outlined in a document that we published at the Mobile World Congress in 2016, which is called 5G Empowering Vertical Industry, where you can find basically the logic that governs our strategy for 5G in vertical industries. So I mentioned the 5G Action Plan and what is our strategy to promote 5G deployment in Europe. So we have published this action plan in 2016, and we have basically three main milestones. One first milestone, which is to bring Europe, let's say, capable of deploying early 5G pre-commercial trials or pre-commercial deployments in 2018. That means this year. So we have a second milestone, which is to have at least one city in each and every member state with 5G deployed on a commercial basis in 2020. And the last, let's say, milestone is to have 5G deployed along main transport paths, in 2025. So this is our roadmap, and this is something that we are discussing with the member states in such a way that we try to generate economies of scale and economies of scopes, but at least that we try to have as much as possible across the member states the same time window for deploying 5G in such a way that we avoid the fragmentation effect that we experience with 4G, when the first 4G deployment was in 2010 with Telia, I think, in the Nordic countries. And then it took quite a while, more than 7 years, before the spectrum was assigned in the various member states. And here we try to have something a little bit more compact in such a way that Europe altogether moves into 5G without fragmentation effect. So first framework condition that we try to put in place in the 5G action plan is the availability of spectrum. And here again, in 2016, we reached a milestone, or we reached an agreement to consider 3 bands that we call the pioneer bands. The first one is the 700 megahertz band, which we use basically for wide area coverage and high reliability type of services. The second band is the 3.4, 3.8 gigahertz band, the C band, which is already today subject of auctions. And the last band is the so-called millimeter wave band, which is, you have probably heard in other regions of the world, for instance in the US, in Japan, in Korea, is primarily looked at from the point of view of the 28 gigahertz spectrum. In Europe, this spectrum is not so much available, so we are looking at 26 gigahertz, which is a challenge to have a device that covers the 2 bands on a global basis. But we know that other regions are very much interested in this 26 gigahertz band, which is also which is China, for instance. So if China and Europe move into the same band, there is a good perspective to create a wide, let's say, very wide ecosystems. So from the 5G PPV perspective, which is our framing initiative to support deployment from the, let's say, public finance perspective, we have a roadmap which has 3 phases. So first phase, we looked into basic technology. This is already 2-3 years ago. Now we are in a second phase of proof of concepts and implementation of trials. And for the third phase, where we are moving into now, we stimulate, let's say, large pan-European large-scale infrastructures which are 5G compliant, which are made available to users in vertical industry. So as I said, in energy domain, in healthcare domain, in automotive domain, and also in transport domain, in smart cities domain, in such a way that these companies can come to that platform and test their business case or their use case, their digital use case on top of this pan-European infrastructure. So here we have a dedicated action on connected cars, because connected cars has a special attention in Europe. And here, in a couple of months, we will integrate a number of use cases, vertical use case, on top of a platform which we have just started to develop now. So this is a kind of flagship initiative. I mentioned connected cars. And we have decided in Europe to take connected cars or connected mobility as a flagship use case for 5G deployment. So that means that we have reached an agreement with member states, and the member states agree to make available for pan-European trials stretches of motorways or of highways, which we call pan-European corridors. So today we have 10 such pan-European corridors that you see here illustrated on this diagram. And we are now starting to populate these corridors with experiments using 5G-like type of equipment to trial both the V2V type of applications, the the vehicle to infrastructures, and the vehicle to network type of infrastructure. So this is something that we are just starting now, and that we expect that we can expand in our next financial framework. The next financial framework of the Commission is the financial period that starts from 2020 to 2027. So we are now making our proposal for the budget between 2020 and 2027 in Europe. And in this budget, we have made a proposal to deploy 5G along these pan-European corridors and beyond. So this is part of our, let's say, medium to long-term perspective. We are also working quite a lot with, as I said, with vertical industries, because we have to build the case with the vertical industry. So this is a kind of snapshot of the kind of entities we are working with. Quite well known as the 5G Automotive Association, which is driving the requirements for the automotive sector. More recently was created the 5G ASIA, which is dealing with the factories environment, and this is something that originates very much from the German Industry 4.0 type of environment, but this is a collection of actors working in the automation and industrial domains. And then we have quite a few other, well, better known organizations such as EBU in the context of broadcast, or healthcare type of organization, or PPDR related type of organizations with whom we are discussing the requirements that they want to demonstrate when they deploy their own network based on 5G technology. So this is an illustration of the platform that we are putting in place now. I mentioned that at this moment in time we are supporting the deployment of a pan-European test and validation platform, and for verticals to come in and test their own use cases. So you see all these places are covered with one of the nodes. We expect that Barcelona may become another node, but we are now looking into the possibility of adding additional nodes, and all these nodes will be used by people in various domains to test their use cases. So at the same time, we have to take into account that the technology is still evolving at this moment in time. I mean, so far, 3GPP, which is the global standardization organization, has put a lot of emphasis to develop the first generation or the first release of a 5G standard, which is so-called Release 15, which is primarily aimed at covering the super broadband use case. That means broadband beyond 10 gigabit per second per carrier, which means that this standard is available now. I think products are announced for next year on this standard, and this is primarily to cope with the, let's say, the rapidity that the early movers that you find in the US, like Verizon, AT&T, or you find in Korea, like KT, or also in Japan. This is just to satisfy the need that they have, because they wanted to deploy very fast and they wanted to have the technology available very fast. But the other part, which is related to the kind of vertical use cases that you can find in smart cities environments or in other regions where you have factories or where you have hospitals or healthcare centers, they will be continued now in what is called the Release 16, and this Release 16, this Release 16 is supposed to deliver the standards end of 2019 for specific use cases which are still being developed or at least enhanced from the perspective of the technology standard. URLLC, ultra-reliable, low-latency communication, is something which is very important in factories environment, where we see that people already tell us that the 1 millisecond latency, which is developed by the 5G ecosystem, can, in some cases of robotic control or drone control, not be enough for the requirements that they have for their particular use cases. So this is something which is going on at this moment in time, which we are also, of course, looking into in such a way that Europe develops or supports the development of the best technologies. Now, more recently, to know better where we are in Europe, because Europe is a complex region, we are 28 member states, soon 27 member states, so things do not happen at the same pace with the same focus in each and every member state. So recently we have launched a kind of observatory to try to understand a bit better with the member states what's happening in Europe. And now you see that from the first report that we got 1 month ago, we have at this moment in time things which are moving quite a bit in Europe. We have 140 trials which are implemented at this moment in time, which are running in the various member states. Primarily these trials are, let's say, agreements between an operator and a vendor, or a couple of operators and a couple of vendors. We have more than 20 cities which are 5G trial cities at this moment in time. Barcelona is obviously one, but you can find Berlin, Oulu, many more cities at this moment in time which are trialing this technology to the benefit of their citizens. We have, as I said, the cross-border corridors. We have about 10 cross-border corridors. And what is encouraging is that the member states now, they are all about at the same time developing their own 5G strategy in such a way that there is a kind of window of opportunity effect that takes place across Europe, a little bit better than what we had in 4G. And already at the level of frequency bands, we have, it's not as advanced as in the US, where they are already moving into the auctions for the 28 gigahertz band in November, that means this month. We have already a number of auctions taking place in Europe, but contrary to the US, they are primarily focusing on the 3.5 or 3.4 to 3.6 gigahertz band. So this is a snapshot of the trials that I mentioned. We have these trials, 50 to 60%, they are condensed on a limited number of countries: Spain, France, Italy, Germany, United Kingdom, Russia. And you see that we still have a large number of trials which are technology trials, but we have also quite a few pilots which are now trialing the technology in customer context, either for media and entertainment type of applications where you need the very high bandwidth and the very high speed, but also in this one is in smart cities is this one. This one is Industry 4.0, so there are a number of things happening in various verticals at this moment in time. So just in passing, if you would be interested, we have worked with GSMA to sort of design what we call 5G awards. So if you are interested, there is a contest which is open, a challenge which is open until the 21st of November, when you can make proposals for the best initiatives in 5G in Europe or elsewhere, and this will be granted an award in next GSMA event, Mobile World Congress. Just a quick things to tell you that next year in Valencia, 17th, 18th of June, we will organize what we call the Global 5G event. So it's all the regions, the main regions. So this is Europe, this is China, this is Korea, this is Japan, this is Brazil, this is Americas, where these people will present the status of 5G in their region. So this is something we organize also with the Spanish colleagues. And you can potentially, if you are interested, get more information on our website, where we have a full-blown dedicated website on what we are doing on 5G at this moment in time. So I hope I was in time.
Yeah, very good, Bernard. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We will come to the questions later on, but it was great to see that Spain is one of the leaderships on the pilots.
Of course.
So here we also have later on a speaker on Cellnex that we are running a pilot in Barcelona about 5G neutral hosting with the city council itself. So projects are alive and pilots are alive, which is good. So let me introduce now the next speaker. So we have the pleasure to have Sergi Elaprolu with us. So he's coming from US, very good. So Sergi is the global leader and senior manager on the Amazon Web Service public sector team. And basically, he's responsible for the IoT initiatives and also leadership on smart solutions for Amazon Web Services. So the speech, the title is going to be Making Sense of Urban Data with IoT and Cities That Never Sleep. So I think that coming back to the introduction we had, IoT is going to be very important in the next years. So we hope to enjoy your talk here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergey. So good afternoon. My name is Sergi Elaprolu. Like Sergey said, I am part of AWS. For those of you that are not familiar with Amazon Web Services, we're the cloud computing division of Amazon. Service launched about 12 plus years ago now. We're now supporting millions of customers worldwide, tens of thousands of public sector customers worldwide, all the way from local municipal level to states, national, defense, intelligence, and so on and so forth. When you think about cloud, is it?
Well, 5G is not supposed to solve these problems yet, so maybe in the future.
So while we're trying to get that sorted out, so while you think about a cloud-based environment and the reason why this all makes sense, in the context that both Sergi and Bernard talked about, which is 5G is going to open up, in one way to think, it's going to open up the pipes. So a lot more data can flow through the pipes, which means cities, and not just cities, but all public sector organizations worldwide need to prepare for that onslaught of what's going to happen, both on the device side, but also all of the data that those devices are going to be generating. So that's where we're focused on. And like the gentleman before me said, it's growing. It's growing at a very rapid pace. Whether it's 20 billion or, according to some estimates, it's up to 200 billion by 2025, no one knows for sure. The reality is somewhere in between. But one thing is for certain, and this is proven, is that the pace at which these deployments are happening is rapidly increasing. And something that's leading to that is smart infrastructure. So what I mean by that is, depending on your context, if you're a local municipality or you're a national government, you're upgrading your infrastructure, you're deploying net new infrastructure because you're interested in collecting information from that infrastructure to understand what's happening. Use cases like predictive maintenance, use cases that are real-time response and reaction type systems, use cases that can predict the demand, for example, on a national grid and adjust the generation cycle to meet the demand. So lots of use cases where infrastructure is being updated. In the city context, These could be things like smart street light poles, road surfaces that have sensors now embedded in them, and traffic lights and so on. So a lot of infrastructure is getting upgraded, and this is leading to the exponential growth of devices that cities and communities are starting to bring online. So when you think about devices, all of us generally jump to the conclusion that there is a compute capability at the edge, whether it's a Raspberry Pi or something equivalent like that. There's capability that you can use at the edge or on the device to do processing. But in reality, that's not the case. If you look at the ratio of devices that are coming online, I would say probably 85, maybe more than 85% of the devices are actually not devices. They're what's called MCU, microcontroller units. So these are the small, extremely resource-constrained units. A couple of examples here. The one on the left, if you wear a Fitbit, there's an MCU in it. If you use any of these thermostat-type devices, there are MCU in it. MCUs make up about 85% of these deployments that are happening. And this is a challenge because MCUs, because they're resource constrained, they also create some challenges to customers in terms of security, in terms of management, in terms of what happens if I lay MCUs on a road surface, 2 years down the road, there is a security problem. I need to patch those MCUs. So how do you deal with that? Right? So thinking through all of that, this creates a challenge for customers. Next, one of the gentlemen before me talked about the autonomous vehicles. We're barely scratching surface, but imagine a few years from now, when autonomous vehicles are driving around in our cities, on our streets, the amount of traffic in terms of data exchange that needs to happen real time from the vehicle to the infrastructure as well as vehicle to vehicle. So V2X and V2V is also going to lead to a lot of data movement that needs to happen. 5G certainly helps with that. Without 5G, this becomes almost impossible to do it. You can, so if you look at most of the trials that are underway for AV, CV technologies, they're pilots. They're not full-blown rollouts because the amount of traffic that's needed is not sustainable on a 4G network. So this is where a lot of our customers that we work with, when I say customers, I'm talking about thousands of customers around the globe, cities, states, et cetera, that we're working with, are rethinking the model of how are they going to design IT systems moving forward. So on the left is how traditionally systems have been built, right? So you have a transportation system that has its own databases, it has its own data stores, it has its own analytics systems, et cetera. Does exactly what it's meant to, but more and more cities are thinking about integrating transportation with public safety, with environmental impact, with economic activity. So lots of integration is happening. So that's one. Second, the data that cities are dealing with is no longer your traditional ASCII-related data. You're now dealing with a lot more video data. You're dealing with audio data. You're dealing with social media data. Lots of data sources that are unstructured, coming at you at a very high velocity, volume, and variety. So this also creates a challenge for a lot of cities as to how do they create a system that can take all of that information, process it, allow to respond real time, so that you have that intelligence built into the entire platform. So that's where the concept of a data lake starts coming more and more common. So we have a number of cities that we're working with where they're building an entire data lake in the cloud where all of the data sources come in. Some of those get responded and acted on real time, and additional ones just stay there for longer term reasons. And as you can imagine, there are some new technologies that are also emerging, whether it's the edge computing, the IoT side of it, and I'll touch on some of this a little bit later. Command and control capabilities, this is the mechanisms where I talked about earlier. If there is a potential problem about to happen because of weather conditions, you would want to probably shut down traffic lights or do something based on actions that or information that you're gaining in a different system. So how do you do that command and control mechanism and not do it on a smaller scale pilot, but do it at the national level? So this becomes a challenge as well. Real-time data analytics, most customers that have played with data analytics have done some form of real-time analytics. The reason why I put it up here is the volume at which you're now dealing with the data is huge. I'm talking some customers of AWS working at petabyte scale. They're processing petabytes of data real time to understand what's happening and then take actions automatically based on that information. So that volume is only going to grow exponentially. And then artificial intelligence and machine learning, finally, data dissemination. This is interesting in that it's no longer interesting enough for you to process, consume the data, churn and extract insights, but you also have responsibility to disperse that information out, right? Whether it's for your own use, perhaps citizens, perhaps other stakeholders that are part of your ecosystem. So data dissemination and the models and channels that are being used is also changing rapidly. So for those of you that are not familiar with AWS at a very high level, this is what the platform looks like. Lots of capabilities. But in reality, this is really what the platform looks like. Over 110 services, all the way from the core infrastructure layer to all the way up to the SaaS layer. But in between, the areas that I'm really focused on when I go around the world and talk to customers is the IoT and AI, because those are the two areas that customers are innovating rapidly and very interested in innovating rapidly with. So let me back up. So when I talk about IoT, right, so I talked about microcontrollers and how that's a problem for our customers. I talked about the notion of edge computing, where some of this video data, some of this vehicle to infrastructure data, you're not going to be able to move it back all the way to the data center, or certainly not to the cloud either. It doesn't make sense for two reasons. One, the volume of data that you're getting is going to be so much that it doesn't make financial sense to move all of that data to the data center, process, and then decide what's useful. That's one reason. Second, for a use case like AV, you need that real-time response. You cannot go back and come back to the edge to decide. So edge becomes extremely important. And then in the cloud itself, you're talking, right now, if you look at pilots, you're talking tens of thousands of devices. When a full-size city scales up, you're talking potentially millions of devices on day one. And that's only going to grow as some of these technologies mature, right? So volume and the pace at which this is happening creates a challenge for customers as well. So in that case, what AWS has done is this is a set of services within the IoT capability. The goal here is to make it easy for customers to bring their devices, connect their devices, start extracting information from those devices, make decisions on that information either on the device, at the edge, or in the cloud if you want to, or in some cases, just send it back to the data center if there is a reason why that data needs to go back to the data center. So all of the capability. So FreeRTOS is our real-time operating system. It's open source. It allows MCUs to be connected to the cloud securely with TLS 1.2 always on. It allows to do over-the-air updates so that you can patch things, you can change software configuration down the road, no matter what scale you're dealing with. Similarly, next one is Greengrass. That's our edge computing capability. That's where you can bring hundreds of thousands or however many devices you want, allow you to process. The interesting thing here is it's a piece of software that we provide that you can deploy on your own hardware. So if you have edge infrastructure that you're deploying, Greengrass goes on that infrastructure, can aggregate all of the data, let you process on top of the data, including doing machine learning inference at the edge, using a model that you're building in the cloud and being able to push that down to the edge. So lots of capability in that. And then in the cloud, obviously, we have to care about how do you onboard devices, how do you ensure devices are managed properly going forward in an automated way, how do you ensure from a security point of view that there is nothing out of the ordinary or unexpected happening on the device side. So that's the capability that those do. And then the last one is the reason why you do all of this is because you're interested in the data. You're interested in understanding what's happening in the data. So a lot of customer feedback led to us launching IoT Analytics, which is, the name is a little bit misleading in that it's not just for IoT data. It can be for any time series type of data. You can bring it in real time, no matter how much volume of data is coming in. You can filter, enrich. You can bring additional data to bring more context to what's happening. You can do machine learning real time on top of the data, eventually get to a dashboarding or a data warehouse. All of it fully managed without you doing anything. By the way, all of these services are serverless, meaning you're not doing any servers, there is no patching, there is no scaling. Everything is done automatically for you. Next up is the machine learning stack. I won't go through all of the details, but keep in mind that there are 3 levels at which we address machine learning. The topmost level is, think of these as APIs or API endpoints that you can trigger with some input, and we give you output, right? So if you look at the first 2, image recognition, object detection, facial detection, those kinds of capabilities are built into the recognition engine. So you can provide still images, it'll do all of the analysis and give you the metadata. It's up to you to decide what you do with the metadata. The second one is same capability, but doing it on a video stream that's coming in real time. When I say video stream, it's not just one camera. Imagine a large city with tens of thousands of security cameras or surveillance cameras all streaming in. You're able to intercept and analyze all of that data, look for interesting things. It could be persons of interest, it could be car that shouldn't be on a street but has been parked there for more than appropriate time. So anything that you're interested in on live video streams can be processed, detected, alerted, and you can then take appropriate actions based on that. The next set of services are voice services. You probably are familiar with Alexa. There are a number of customers that want Alexa capability, but they don't want to use Alexa, so their actual capability is kind of like Polly, which is ability for you to give text input and get voice output in multiple languages. I believe up to 50 plus languages now. Lex is a service that gives voice input, voice output. So you can voice enable any kind of application you want, whether it's a web app, mobile app, etc. Translate, as the name implies, one language to a different language. Transcribe is voice input, text output, so that you can do transcriptions real time. So imagine some of these voice services may sound a little bit odd, but if you imagine a city environment where citizens may not necessarily all be tech savvy, how do you lower the barrier and make it easy for customers and citizens in this case to interact with systems, including live translations and including transcriptions and so on. And then at the layer below that is where a lot of the machine learning that happens at scale is done. SageMaker is a service that allows you to bring your data, no matter how much it is, petabytes, easy. We can provide you some models that are pre-built. You can use those, or you can build your own model, whichever one you prefer, and then let the engine do all of the processing and the scaling of the infrastructure, process and get you the output. So the idea here is to make machine learning as simple as possible. And then at the bottom tier is where we have customers that are machine learning experts, data scientist experts. So this is where they can create their own models on infrastructure that's optimized for that. I'll quickly run through a few more. Alexa talked about voice enablement. This is actually getting a lot of attention in cities. I mean, we have probably, I would be guessing here, but 10 plus cities in the US alone that have Alexa enabled. State of Georgia is a good one where all 78 digital properties at State of Georgia in the US are Alexa enabled. So I don't need to go to the website anymore. All I have to do is voice enable, interact, respond, submit information, get information. I can do all of those transactions using voice. And then this is an area where we're seeing a lot of interest from customers as well, which is augmented reality. So this is where, because of the volume and the variety of data that's coming at them, it is impossible for a dashboard or a BI tool to be able to process and make it real, make it actionable. So a lot of customers are interested in exploring how do you bring in augmented reality so I give you the information at the right time, at the right place, and for AV or AR types of systems to work, 5G once again is critical because you're downloading a lot of that data, you're processing it real time. So this is a final view of how the platform looks like. There are a lot of customers going in this direction. On the left are, I talked about audio, video, and sensor feeds coming in, with edge computing playing a more pivotal role moving forward. And then in the middle is where you're aggregating all of the data, you're processing, you're storing it, you're analyzing it, you're doing machine learning on top of the data. And then on the right is integration with existing systems, existing data centers, and so on. So a full cloud-based, serverless platform that you pay for what exactly you consume, with security baked in, with scale up, scale down, fully baked in. Some examples of customers, but I'll stop here. I'm here, and
thank you very much, Sri, for your speech. So we really appreciate it. So now we have to go fast to some questions. So Bernard, if you could come, please, with us together. So let's see if we manage to have some chairs. Thank you. So I think that we have the chance on the two presentations, two panelists, we had to see what's the position from the European Commission, and we also saw a vision and an approach from a private sector too. So I have also a couple of questions to continue the discussions today. We have a couple of questions from the public too. But just to go fast, I would also appreciate if you can provide short answers to the questions. Let's try to minimize the time to cover more questions, and let's see how we can proceed. So when do you expect that 5G would be a reality within the industry and the EU citizens? So reality, I mean as a commercial service.
So it is happening already. There are certain cities that are rolling out 5G pilots in a limited scale. I would imagine by 2019, I would not be surprised if I see 5G becoming real, where it's actually used for mission-critical systems in those cities. Other parts, so these are cities in the US that I'm referring to. There are other parts of the globe where, like Bernard said, lots of experimentation going on, standards being developed. I would not be surprised in the next 2 years if it becomes really viable.
Okay, thank you. Bernard, European Commission, what do you think?
Well, we see it with a little bit of a different perspective, because this question relates very much to what is it that you call 5G. So if we call 5G the capability to provide 10 gigabit per second or huge data rates or huge amount of data rates, 5G probably is going to be there next year, and this is what we see in the US. Korea Telecom is moving aggressively into it. They are planning to deploy it. So these kind of applications, which are broadband becoming super broadband, the classical business case of the operators, whilst in the US probably they will develop for they will deploy for fixed wireless access first. In Asia they will deploy for capacity. In China they will have maybe more ideas of enhanced mobile broadband. But this can come in a first wave pretty soon. But if you talk about the full 5G, the one that has really the three let's say corners of the 5G triangle, which has all the capabilities in terms of latency, in terms of massive machine communications, in terms of being deployed with fully virtualized networks and fully slicing capabilities behind, I think this is going to take a little bit more time. And as I try to show in one of my slides, 3GPP is at this moment in time working on the standards to make that happen. So these standards will be available in 2019, end of 2019. That means that products will be there in 2020, 2021. That means that deployment will start something like 2022. So there is a kind of range of deployment, in our views, that really depends on what it is that you call 5G and how you see 5G in the perspective of your specific application.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Then another one which is going to be quite fast. I mean, we have had this in several discussions already. Do you consider 5G a disruptive or incremental innovation?
My view is it's incremental. I may be wrong on this, mainly because you're talking about immediate need for 5G is the volume of data and the real-time carrying capacity of that data, whether it's video data, whether it's more data coming through existing sources, and so on. Down the road, what 5G can unleash could be disruptive in the types of services that citizens and cities and customers are able to do. So the innovation and the disruption is happening on the service delivery side, but the technology itself, if you look at the core of it, it's more transmission, more volume at higher rates. So in that way, it's incremental, but the delivery side of it could be disruptive.
Good. Any comment? Do you agree on this, Bernard?
Well, I must say we see it more on the disruptive side, because if we look at 5G from the perspective of only providing additional capabilities at the radio layer, of course, it's just an evolution of what 4G LTE can provide today. Now, if we think of 5G from the perspective of a complete re-engineering of the core networks, meaning that the core networks, which is today implemented with specific hardware and software technologies, moves into network functions, virtualizations, and moves into the capability of slicing the network in such a way that each tenant can implement its own network with its own characteristics on the same physical hardware and software platforms. This, we believe, is quite disruptive, at least for the operators, because the operators have to reinvent themselves in this type of business. And in addition, it provides what you said, all the innovation capabilities that come on top for the other players which are using the platform. But within the platform, we believe it's already something reasonably disruptive in our view.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I will come to some of the questions of the audience. Actually, I see one question which is getting lots of it's getting lots of votes, but now it has disappeared. I don't know what has happened here. Anyway, the question was basically, I mean, it's a tricky question indeed, but since it got at least 15 votes in the audience, do you think that 5G will have any environmental or health impact? I mean, I suppose that many people is worried about the new frequencies. We know that this is to come. We don't have yet the technology, but do you know about any studies been happening, or you have any opinion on that?
From a negative environmental impacts or negative health impacts on citizens, I'm not familiar with that. I'm sure Bernard probably has much better thoughts on it. From a positive side of it, we're seeing a lot of interest from remote healthcare, video-based healthcare, online healthcare, and so on. So from that perspective, once again, the delivery side of it, the innovation that's happening that is citizen-facing, we see a lot of potential on the healthcare side itself. So remote sites that never had a chance to get connected into the main network now have that ability to with 5G.
Okay. On our side, let's say two types of worries. Environmental is about let's say the visual pollution that you can get in cities and how this is going to be deployed. It's true that 5G, to live up to its promise, requires small cells, so a huge number of small cells. For instance, to give you an example, in the US, they have deployed about 150,000 tower sites over the last 20 years. And now for 5G, they guess that they will have, over the next 5 years, to implement another 100,000 number of sites. So it really explodes the number of sites that you have to play with to implement the small cells. But on the other hand, we see that the technology comes very much integrated, and you can see there have been some experiments that I know in France, but probably elsewhere, where this technology is integrated in urban type of buildings, like a bus shelter, for instance, or this type of things. And people really don't notice it. At the end of the day, it's something that you don't really see. And what we are trying to do on our side is to facilitate, from a regulatory perspective, the deployment of the small cells in such a way that it gets a minimum red tape. Now, from the point of view of healthcare, I'm not surprised by the question, because I can tell you this is a question we receive one question from citizens or from association almost every week. We receive a letter, what is the Commission doing about the 5G potential damage due to radiations. So our understanding at this moment in time is that there is a kind of maximum level which has been set up by the ICNIRP, which is a body that depends on the United Nations. They have sort of fixed the maximum level of radiation, and it's up to the member states to verify that this threshold is not exceeded. But so far, we don't have any evidence that moving close or beyond this threshold really has a dedicated, a particular health effect. And to a certain extent, it's logical, because if we use the bands that I mentioned, 700 megahertz is a band which has already been used so far, so there is nothing new in the usage of these bands from the point of view of health effect. 3.5 gigahertz is the same. It's a band which has already been used for a number of applications. The real novelty is the millimeter wave, and here no one knows what millimeter wave is going to create. But one very simple physical effect is when you transmit millimeter waves to your skin, it's not like at 2 gigahertz. It does not penetrate your skin. It's blocked by the skin. So we don't have any specific study on that. This is something we have in the back of our mind. But so far, we don't really see the evidence that these type of things would really create health damages. But it's true that it's something which is very sensitive. Citizens are very much sensitive about it, and we really have to find a convincing response from the public sector side.
Thank you very much. I know that it was not an easy question at all. Then another one that's coming from the audience that I think is interesting too. Which is the industry that will most be impacted by 5G connectivity, and for which application? Can you just point out just the industry and application you think that would be a killer one?
So I can say that from a public sector side that I get more involved with, autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles, and the V2X, V2V is an area that a lot of municipalities around the globe are interested, they're exploring. So that, I think, in my view, is going to be one of the major changes that 5G will unleash that was not previously possible.
Okay, thanks.
Well, as I said in my presentations, we are gambling a lot on, as you said, connected and automated driving, or connected mobility as we call it. So for us, it's really a key use case where we believe 5G will have an impact, because it requires all these elements that 5G brings into a game. That means high data rates and very low latency. And there is an element of innovation that 5G brings about, which is not necessarily the same for previous generations, is this ability for a certain use case to use data coming from different frequency bands. I'm not talking about spectrum aggregation. I'm talking about a vehicle, for instance, that could, for the same application, extract information which are coming from the 700 megahertz band, from the 3.5 gigahertz band, or the 5.9 gigahertz band in Europe, or the millimeter wave band, for all the information which are either very localized, that means the surrounding of cars, or information which are located in the network, which provide the maps or this kind of more global type of information that you can aggregate into a global overview of what's happening around the car, but using different frequency bands. So this aggregation capability across different frequency bands is something we believe very much in. And also, I very much subscribe to what Sergi said in his introduction, that when 4G was launched, no one predicted the advent of Airbnb, WhatsApp, Uber, all these apps type of applications. So it's very likely that the innovation today, we don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be pushed and catalyzed by the users themselves. And the additional element of innovation that comes compared to 4G and Airbnb or the Uber type of model is precisely the IoT dimension, the possibility of generate apps from the IoT, from the sensor perspective, from the object perspective. This will be a combination of elements which in our view has a lot of innovation potential.
Okay, thank you. Then coming back to the example that you put, that you said that this is like we are gambling. I mean, my question would be, who has more aces? Is Europe, is US, or is Asia? We know that here there is like a competition, even though that I see that you are collaborating here on the organizations or workshops that you are setting up, but we all know that there is a race. So where do you think we are positioned? We have a US speaker, we have an European speaker, so what's your opinion?
At the moment, looking at the data that's publicly available, looks like there are much more aggressive plans for certain carriers in the US. There may be equal levels of planning in Asia Pac that may also be going ahead. I've seen pilots move forward, and I've seen timelines where those pilots are supposed to be full-blown deployments for cities in the US. So would you agree? Would you?
Well, that is certainly a race, but maybe the race is not on the same terms depending on the region that you are looking at. And again, the US, they put a lot of emphasis on fixed wireless access to provide, or to, let's say, penetrate places where operators are not, to create competition to the cable operators with broadband type, super broadband type of infrastructures. This is not a problem that we have in Europe. We have it in some regions, but it's less pregnant because we have other technologies to cover broadband penetration and broadband access for the citizens. So what we can see is that at this moment in time, if we think in terms of ecosystem, it's clear that the 28 gigahertz ecosystem, where a good part of the US industry is located, Intel, Qualcomm, and all the chipset vendors, and a huge number of companies, this ecosystem most probably will be pushed by US and Korea. They will be the drivers in this ecosystem. If you look at China, my understanding is that they are looking into the standalone ecosystem. And a standalone ecosystem is the 5G ecosystem where you don't need to run your 5G system a 4G network. The non-standalone requires, most of the deployment today, they are non-standalone. That means that to deploy 5G, you need to have already a kind of backing 4G network that provides the control functions and that provides the control of the 5G edge that you are deploying. China moves into standalone. That means that they don't need 4G. They can deploy completely new type of 5G type of network. In Europe, I believe, or at least this is where we are looking into at Commission level, we believe that, of course, we have to promote the broadband, super broadband type of use case. This is something that we don't ignore, of course. But we believe that we have a certain chance to be drivers in the so-called vertical ecosystems. And this is where we are putting a lot of emphasis at this moment in time to work with the verticals in such a way that we can create this kind of perfect combination between one segment of the industry and another segment of the industry to create win-win type of situations. So the race is there, but maybe it's not exactly on the same terms.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we have arrived at the end of the session. I really want to appreciate that we have had a very excellent speakers, and I think that the view you have given have been very much appreciated for the audience. So thank you very much for your participation in the session. Okay, let's start again the second session. So thank you very much to all of you that stayed here. Basically, as I told you before, I promised you that I would bring here 4 excellent speakers. I have the pleasure to know all of them. But if you agree, I will just introduce all the panelists that we have, and later on we will follow up with a small presentation for each one of the speakers. So they will have 8 minutes presentation for each one of them. Then we'll have a roundtable, and again, you will be able to put your questions. Obviously, I also have some questions in the case that you don't provide anyone, but checking the previous panel, I am sure that you will have many questions to the rest of the panelists. So I will keep calling them and inviting them to the stage, please. So first of all, we will have Óscar Pallarols. Welcome to the stage. Óscar is the Global Commercial Director of Cellnex. He's dealing with different business lines, such as the telecom infrastructures, small cells, fiber connectivity, smart IoT, and mission-critical networks. So he will expose the vision of an infrastructure operator, which might end up playing a key role when deploying 5G under a sharing model too. So welcome, Óscar. Next speaker is Daniel Marco, please. Thank you. Welcome, Daniel. Daniel Marco is the Director of Smart Catalonia from the Catalan government. He has experience in the government dealing with different roles. He's been director of the Catalan Digital Agenda and also head of the Business Digitalization and ICT Government Industry Promotion. So he will expose the 5G Catalan strategy that we have, and he's leading and implementing too. Good, so next speaker is going to be Colin Wilcock. Welcome to the stage, Colin. Colin Wilcock is chairman of the board of the 5G Infrastructure Association and head of radio network standardization at Nokia. He will present the current 5G PPP activities in the smart city space, and he will also touch on the future of smart networks beyond the Edge 2020. I mean, Colin has an important role because he's gathering all the players that we have, not only on the research projects in Europe, but also in the community. And the last but not least speaker, welcome Francisco, is Francisco Javier García Vieira. Francisco is the Public Service Director from Red ES. He started his professional activities in Telefónica, and in 2003 he joined Red ES. He will expose the Spanish government information about the call that they have issued and how from the Spanish government they foresee the promotion of activities of 5G. So thank you, all of you. So the first speaker is going to be Óscar Pallarols. So Óscar, the stage is yours.
May I?
Go ahead. You have your 8 minutes. Thanks. It should be,
okay.
Your presentation should be running there.
Everything ready?
Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction, for the invitation. Couple of challenges. First, try to make you aware about what's 5G in cities, so that's challenging. Second, try to make it less than 8 minutes. So I'll do my best in that sense. Why do we talk about cities when we think about 5G? Mainly because of one reason. Cities are the places with the higher digital density. So the places with the most data traffic because of digital content happens there. So everything we can imagine probably will be first time succeeding happening in the city, except probably anything related to the industrial. But that's really relevant. And we can look at some examples, thinking about how the infrastructure will provide those so many connectivity with long tail of use cases that we are still to imagine which one will be. Think about the things talking, not the devices, not ourselves, but goods, appliances, things saying, hey, hi, I'm here, I want to provide you a data. 6. What the hell is 6? People moving, 6 liters, 6 floors for a lift. So many things will get into this IoT wall. Then everything related to the mission critical, the ultra reliable networks, thinking about health, even early responders, thinking about the connected car. So all these, all this is, sorry, excuse me. All this is where we imagine this will happen. And if we look now on the 5G features, first one is very much related to the enhanced broadband. how much throughput do we get in our handsets as individuals. And this is a crazy curve of the data explosion by 2025, something like that. Secondly, the massive machine-type communications. We are thinking about 1 million things saying hi every square kilometer. Means quite a lot of data. And also, as you can see, 10 years battery life. Not thinking anymore to plug in the smartphone where I go sleeping, but 10 years. Sounds good. Sounds good. We will see. And then the ultra-reliable low latency. So how much we will get a 5 nines availability, how much we will get this 1 millisecond latency. Sounds crazy. So that's the reason why I was saying that probably we cannot imagine yet what the killer application is, because we have a set of potential use cases. You can see most of them here, but there's no one really requiring all 5G features, all. The one which requires the most, it's remote surgery. But I don't think it's a massive use case that most of the MNOs can make a BP run. So it's very niche. What can we say about this sector, this crazy technological sector? With the 5G, we are setting the foundations to build up the future. But we don't know yet what these user applications and killer applications will be in the sense the technology it's been defined. So there's many technology on the 5G still to discover what is the challenge this technology is willing to address. That's important. And that's important why do we need to work in an ecosystem, in a cross-value chain partnerships, because otherwise no unique, no single silo company will discover that. This is somehow a social responsibility in that sense. This is a Cellnex 5G stadium, Wanda Metropolitano, the brand new Atletico Madrid stadium with a unique neutral host network, all commercial MNOs in Spain providing service, not with 5G frequencies, up to 4G now. You know that 4G still being absolutely efficient, so networks still space for improvement in terms of providing data traffic and so on. But this is an example of what a kind of venue 5G would be. And if we think about the experience, think about 4 years ago in a World Cup where the selfie was supposed to be the, let's say, the nice thing to do. Think about this last World Cup where the streaming was the thing supposed to do. But think about the next one where the immersive cup is the thing supposed to do. One by one, virtual reality, 360 view, only for you, for a dedicated or specific network. Sounds crazy. Sounds crazy. Up to 80,000 people sitting into that stadium, and at least to get 200 meg download streaming to make this experience real. And I've said 1 million connected things by square kilometer. You can get somehow the sizing of all this. Only one thing possible to make all this happen, and it's not exclusive or unique, but in any cell tower, like the one we have, the most iconic in Barcelona, probably you are aware, when you leave the venue, you can just go looking inline, you will see this nice tower. This is a Cellnex tower. We need to get all these antennas traffic, and only one way to backhaul all this data, which is fiber connectivity. Fiber is a must in the cities, not our fiber to the home, but the fiber to make all this front and backhauling from all telecom sites. Otherwise, we will have our conversations and streamings cut off because of no enough pipeline for this data. If you think about spectrum, this very nice and scarce asset, this is somehow a very physical model approach. Lower frequencies, higher range. This is the macros that we have nowadays in the cities, mainly rooftops. Then we move in a higher frequencies, shorter range, but we will be moving with a very high frequencies, as our peer from the DigiConnect said, millimeter wave length with more than 26 gigs and higher, that will penetrate with a very, very short range. And that's very important, low power. This, the first place all this will happen, gonna be in a city. And let me show you how in a very familiar example. Look at this. Try to understand this. How are we going to serve our communities with the right spectrum balance between the macro, left picture, kind of watering by flooding, so a big pipe, explode of water, and everyone on the field gets water. If the one before you is thirsty, you get less water. If not, maybe you are lucky. Think on the right side, just watering by very specific located drops of water. I put the drops of water where the plant is, where he is really thirsty. And that's the concept of this densification with the small cells. Think about any of these drops over there, like a lamppost in your city, like a shelter, like a facade, like a street furniture. Higher frequencies, low range, low power, just to provide service around, I don't know, 200 meters around circle of the lamppost. So, and everything fully connected with the fiber I was mentioning before. One example, this is another example, this is a full 5G deployment from Cellnex, in this case in Italy. I just wanted you to understand these examples. You can see on the top of the picture 3 macro stations, 3 different antennas with 3 different colors. One's, I don't know, one's over there on the left, another one, and another one. These antennas are trying to water by flooding this nice hospital. But you can see many walls, many floors. There's a 3 dB loss every time you want to try to trespass one wall. So what is the only thing to get coverage into those patients in bed trying to have a digital experience? There's only one way. This one. Put hundreds of small antennas, very low power. That's important, I want to highlight. The closer you have any of these antennas, the less your smartphone forces in terms of power to connect with the main antenna. So it's much less radiation, much less impact on the technical and the medical devices, and much more bandwidth for those trying to connect in a digital experience. This is the big change of 5G to make this connectivity aware, to build up this future. Then, of course, we will create the conditions for startups and new business to build up these use cases. And that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Óscar. Okay, next speaker, Daniel Marco. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation.
That's what happened.
I will try to explain about what is 5G strategy of Catalonia. First of all, Catalonia, it's a regional government. We don't have regulation competence in telecommunications. It's on a state level, but there are a lot of main things to do in this dynamization role of the government. Our strategy is behind digital strategy that is in 5 axes of focus: digital citizenship, digital infrastructures, digital government, digital security or cybersecurity, and digital innovation. Within these 5 action fields of action, the government of Catalonia put in place Smart Catalonia. It's our smart nation strategy. It's a citizen-centric strategy. It's the concept of a smart city to the whole nation. And one of these priorities of action is talking about smart technologies. Smart technologies, it's the digital revolution that we have in place. When we talk about 5G, it's not only about 5G itself, it's about the combination of 5G with IoT, with drones, with big data, with artificial intelligence. And what we are doing is deploying different actions to build ecosystems, to deploy technologies in all these areas. If we focus in 5G, we are working in these 5 lines of action: infrastructure, research and innovation, building the ecosystem, open innovation in the ecosystem, talent, anything in digitalization, it's made and used by people, and promotion. today we are here because of that. If we focus in infrastructures, it has been talked by Óscar, no 5G without fiber optic networks. The government of Catalonia is building an open, neutral fiber optic network that will arrive to the whole country and provide this open access to the local operators to build this more last mile deployment. But not only in the fiber optic side, we have done a huge work during the last years building specific towers for communication, broadband communication, in wireless communication and mobile technology to arrive to the rural areas. Mobile operators first deploy where they have their own return on investment. But what will happen to the rest of our country? We have 948 municipalities. Not only Barcelona, not only metropolitan areas, we need to arrive with these infrastructures to the whole country. We built these towers and we share this space to the operators. And also will be a huge infrastructure for the future. Also we have a specific agreement. All the rooftops of the government buildings and sites are open for the deployment of mobile infrastructures. We are facilitators of these infrastructures. But not only with 3G, 4G technology, we need to define a new model of governance. We have a table to share this kind of new guidance with the public administration, with the local authorities, with the telecom operators, how we are going to arrive to the whole country in Catalonia, which will be the deployment within the cities. Has been told before about use the lamps of the streets, the urban furnitures, which is the model to deploy that. We have a specific working group to deploy on that. And electronic magnetic field radiations. There is an awareness about more antennas and antennas. The citizens needs to be aware that we have a program funded by the European Union that it's a sensors of radiation of our sites. This is the legal policy level of radiation, and which is in real time the users, the citizens, can go to a website and see which is the radiation that they have at their homes. Also, we are focusing in innovation. These are some of the technological centers that are boosting most of the European projects in Catalonia. 22 of the 37 European innovation projects in 5G are with Catalan participation. And with these research capabilities, we launch together with the public administrations and the ecosystems laboratories for testing 5G solutions in Barcelona city, but we are also working to identify other areas of the country for virtual reality and content media labs, for drones and new technology for drones labs, autonomous cars and autonomous driving mobility, and finally in 5G, IoT, and so on. Open our cities, our roads, our different ecosystems to deploy live trials on that. And to manage all that, also the government of Catalonia has their own challenges. We are deploying projects together with, I will talk about 5G Barcelona and all the local ecosystems in, for example, a connected ambulance, remote zero-G, in public transport, and the emergency and security policies. But not only in these use cases where we are trying to define pilots and trials, we are also open a challenge to the operators, technical sector, how will be the definition of the network to arrive to industrial plants, to arrive to the smaller village, to the rural areas, and the whole roads on that. We put in place a specific program with 10 million euros for research and innovation to test these advanced digital technologies. And this innovation is driven by the ecosystem. This year we put in place 5G Barcelona. It's a joint venture between the City Hall of Barcelona, the government of Catalonia, the research centers and academia, and to be connected to private sector, telecom operators, startups, and so on. We are working with this huge ecosystem that we have in Barcelona, and it's growing year by year. End users that are testing solutions built by developers, provided by operators, and with the technology that has been testing for first time here in Catalonia. This ecosystem needs to tractionate, to be very connected with the verticals and so on. And then we are providing a dynamization group with different fields of action in media, transport, health, industry, and smart city, putting together the technology push with the demand of technology pool. Finally, we have talent process. We are working with academia to build master class and master the grades in 5G, and also with the occupational service to provide new entrepreneurship programs with this area. Promotion is quite relevant and challenging. We are here in this summit because of this program. We have the Mobile World Congress, the best worldwide mobile world trade show, but also we are connecting all this promotion not only with the big events, also around the territory with a specific dissemination program. We need to deal with the cities itself, with the different sectors to build this new approach of 5G. 5G is not only a connectivity, it's a disruption of new technology, and the training, dissemination, and engagement of these ecosystems is one of the priorities of our program also. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Daniel. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next speaker is Colin Wilcock. So the floor is yours, Colin.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see the slides work.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name's Colin Wilcock. This is the first exciting part is to see if I have the right slides, because we only managed to do this 2 seconds before. And I might be presenting anything. My holiday snaps, my favorite. Let's see what
I think that it's coming, hopefully.
It's coming.
I think that now I will take the time just to address a question that I got in the previous panel.
Yes, please.
I mean, I had a question that, what's the Nokia positioning in all the 5G ecosystem?
It's a very short, quick question. I like that.
Yeah. Just go fast.
In principle, obviously, Nokia is taking it very seriously. I mean, obviously, that I take the position of leading the 5G Infrastructure Association shows that we take leadership in 5G seriously. We're also leading, for example, 3GPP, the RAN, building up the 5G. And together with the other vendors, we are very active. And in some ways, this leads on to what I wanted to present today, that what we've seen from the presentation so far is that there's an amazing amount of activity in this 5G space. There are trials, there are ideas, there's technology, there's standardization, there's spectrum. How on earth can any company or any organization even get the overview of what's going on, let alone influence it and understand what they should do? And what I want to do first is I want to introduce
Colin, put your mic. Colin,
sorry?
it's my close to the mouth, yeah, right.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Or worse? Maybe they want to sleep, maybe they don't want to listen. So let me start by introducing the 5G Infrastructure Association, which for my sins I am chairman of the board of. And what this organization tries to do is it tries to represent and be the voice of European industry in all 5G matters. And this also means that if you join the association, you have visibility into what is going on. So trying to make sense of all these various different activities. And what we try to do is we try and make sure that we also give a clear message to the Commission and to other organizations involved in spectrum and standardization. When it says industry, voice of industry, we actually have more than just industry as members. So as well as big industry, Nokia, Ericsson, all these sort of people, we also have the operators, but we also have SMEs and universities involved. So we have the whole ecosystem in one association trying to understand where Europe is and where Europe should be. In addition to this, we've talked about private-public partnerships. There's been a number of examples. And Bernard earlier introduced the 5G PPP, this very large European program which is trying to gain technological leadership for Europe in this area of 5G. And PPP stands for public-private partnership. And we are the private side. So we signed the contract, maybe foolishly with Bernard, to say, this is what we're going to deliver. So an increased technology, 10 times faster, 10 times better, societal things, investment and things like this. And through this collaboration between the Commission and the private side, we've managed to put the largest research program for 5G on the table early and created leadership for Europe. What are we actually doing in this PPP? Well, we've had various different phases, and this is shown here up on the slide. So we had a first phase where we were looking at very much at the core technology of 5G. So the first phase projects were looking at many of these key areas, and a lot of this work has then fed into standardization. Hundreds of contributions to 3GPP standardization defining what 5G is have come from these projects. We are now well into phase 2, and in phase 2 we go away from trying to build the fundamental building stones for 5G technology, and we try and say, how can we use that technology? And again, the key difference is 5G, the promise of 5G is not just 4G plus a little bit. It's not 4G with new shoes. The promise of 5G is really to encompass a far greater aspect of industry, new domains, to actually digitize society. And to do that, we have to not look back, but look forward. And we have to then try and actually get involved these vertical, so-called vertical industries. So that means the automotive, the healthcare, the media, all of these we need to try and get involved in 5G. But these are their own separate worlds. They won't wait for the telecoms company to say, well, we've got this great solution we think you should use. They have their own problems, their own products. And we need to work together with them, and we need to demonstrate that 5G technology is the right solution for them so that they will invest in that. And that's not just a one-off thing. It's not a question of going to the automotive people and say, well, let's have your requirements on a piece of paper and we'll go away and implement that. It actually requires dialogue. It actually involves a discussion of what possible services there could be. Because as Bernard rightly said, 5G is not set in stone. We have a first version of 5G, but rather like a child, you cannot send the child out to work as soon as it's born. You need to send it to school. It needs to learn. It needs to develop. And it's the same with technology. We have a lot of development still for 5G technology. We're at the start of the story, not the end. We've just then started phase 3, and phase 3 is about creating European platforms where others can innovate on top. And Bernard again showed a series of different places where there is now 5G infrastructure being deployed so that others can build new applications, the new Facebook, the new WhatsApp. If we look at those phase 2 projects, we can see that they actually encompass a large number of verticals. And one of these key ones is clearly smart cities, and that's indeed the background to this whole proposal today. So if we look at overall, we can say that this 5G PPP has been a success for Europe. It has employed thousands of researchers and developers across Europe. It has successfully managed to define a number of the key aspects of the 5G technology. But 2020, which is the end of this program, is not the end of the story. It's not suddenly then, okay, we've got a first version of 5G, that's game over. Clearly, there's going to be continuing development. And the last message I'd like to leave you with is, what's important is that we actually then, we can get to the next slide, that we actually then continue this research into network technologies, that we have the developments for the future, that we bring in those aspects of artificial intelligence into the network, that we actually keep that leadership position. And that is why going forward to the next framework project, the so-called Horizon Europe, we feel it's very important as an association to try and have another partnership program early, as we did with 5G PPP, to drive forward this technology to make sure technological leadership stays in Europe. This is a first idea of the sort of things we would see in this so-called Smart Networks program. These are the key ideas we see that we need to take into account in terms of digital technologies and societal impacts. And it's really leading on from the promise of 5G. It's trying to create an entire digital society. And the point is, this isn't just a nice to have, this is critical for the future, both industrial and societal, of societies. And it's not just about commercial success, it's also about the ability to encode society's values. I think a very good example is the GDPR, this data protection we have in Europe now. The ability for the technologies to actually support that view of society and things like that is something we hope to have in smart networks. Then, against the trend, I would like to finish 18 seconds early.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Colin. Okay, our next speaker, Francisco Garcia Vieira, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sergi. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you very much for being here today. The room is crowded. I can even see some people standing back there. Special thanks to you. And this clear proof that 5G is a hot topic. We've learned so far how 5G is a promising and exciting technology. And while I wait for my presentation to come along, we have learned how it will improve the capability of the existing networks in terms of broadband, latency, reliability, ability to manage thousands of different devices. So I do believe it's a disruptive evolution and the next big impact. And I've come so far, so I need my presentation, please.
Yes, in that the guy. I can see it here, but I cannot see in the big screen. Yeah. Well, I think that you are pressing the button because it's running here, but let's see. Well, apologize for the small problems we are facing. So let's see if we can sort them out. Remember that you can post questions in the meantime for the speakers later on. So use these small breaks you have in order to write your question. And let's see which one we choose. Okay. It seems. No.
Pressure.
Esta no es la primera.
No, pero es que no están pasando, no están saliendo ahí, no la está proyectando.
¿Tiene un pen?
No tiene, coge este mismo, ponlo aquí.
Ese es Logitech.
Ah.
Es un pen. ¿Tiene un USB?
Sí, lo tengo.
Espera, espera, ya voy yo.
No, déjame la cartera. Espera.
Well, as you can see, I think that we are talking about technology, and sometimes maybe we are too far of what we are talking, and And when we really need the technology, nobody knows where technology is. It's like the 5G app, so nobody knows where the killer application is. So now I think that we are in the same situation somehow. So okay, so let's see if we can manage to. ¿No? ¿Tienes por aquí? Vale, perfecto.
¿Está aquí la presentación?
Sí, ¿eh? Es la que está en el RAID, se llama Smart City Work Copy. Loaded it 90 minutes ago.
Okay, well, I think that if you can somehow start introducing, would be good. I'm sure that you will be supported with the slides, but you have knowledge about the topic to start.
So thank you again, and apologies for the delay. What I was trying to say is that we now are aware of how promising 5G technology is. But the problem with such a powerful solution, technological solution, is that it requires a problem that is up to the task. So we have the solution first, and we need the problem to be solved now. A problem, a use case, the holy grail we are in quest of, that makes the business case for 5G, because 5G will require huge investment by the operators, by the industry, huge investments in research and development. And the important thing for 5G, as my colleague in the Commission mentioned before, is which is the use case, how we integrate the value chain in order to make the whole thing to make sense, the whole change of value. So what we're doing is, as part of the national 5G plan, is to follow the path set by the European Commission in the European 5G Action Plan. So government has been preparing the auctions for the spectrum. There is a calendar, a schedule to make the spectrum available for the industry. And one important action within the national 5G plan is a number of...
Here they are.
Okay.
Sorry for that. You will get the extra 2 minutes for the problem. Thank you.
Here we are. Apologies again. So 5G is strategic priority for everyone. In the industry, operators, vendors, public sector, because 5G has the capabilities and the power to push further digitization of economy and society. Because it will be an enabler for many technologies, like augmented and virtual reality. We've learned from the presenter from Amazon Web Services how cloud services can be really made available in a much more widespread way thanks to 5G capabilities. And this big impact that is 5G for the next period Okay. So we can see on the left the timeline. We have now spectrum available. We have a harmonization of spectrum bands all across Europe, led by European Commission. The target of having one 5G city per member state, and within 7 years' time from now, the gigabit society, for which 5G is a key enabler. And 5G, I mentioned it before, it's a top priority for the private sector. It's a priority for the administration as well, at all levels, at the European Commission level, at regional level, we've just learned that, and at the national level as well. So 5G is part of the national 5G plan, but also part of the Smart Territories plan, which we have now up and running. Okay? As I said before, part of the 5G national plan are the 5G field trials. Field trials that with budget of up to 20 million euros, partially funded by European Regional Development Funds, we are now, the call is open for all operators, for industry, for anyone interested in issuing an application for this call, up to two trials in two different regions with an aid intensity up to 40%, with limited duration of the field trials of the pilots, with a spectrum that is made available to these two pilots, both in the 26 in the millimeter band and in the 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz bands that is provided by the ministry for this specific purpose. And the deadline for applications is next 14th of December. Okay. And these field trials are aiming at what? Aiming at three main objectives. First, to test the deployment of 5G networks, because 5G is disruptive not only in terms of broadband capacity or latency, but it's also disruptive in the way networks are managed. It's a game changer for the telecom industry as well. So now you have the ability to configure your network, to test the network management capabilities, network slicing, virtualization, edge computing, which was mentioned before as well. And of course, the trials aim at developing use cases that have to take advantage of the three great characteristics of 5G, at least of one of them, ideally of two or even the three of them. Because, as I said before, the key here, the holy grail, is the use case, the killer application that makes the business case for the network rollout, for network deployment. One thing is having field trials or pilots. A very different scenario is to have a business case that is made for the extensive deployment and rollout of networks. And these field trials focus on different use cases, from virtual to augmented reality, automotive, of course, manufacturing, energy, e-health, entertainment, and of course, smart cities and territories. Because smart cities, since they gather the population, the activity, the economy, the society in developed countries, are a key area to put in practice all the capabilities of 5G. And the communication layers is a must in every smart city project, in every smart city concept. 5G, with all its new capabilities, gives us a new scenario of possibilities in terms of a smart city and digital transformation of cities. But cities have a twofold role to be played in the 5G rollout. On the one hand, they can benefit from this new technology and all its new capabilities. And the smart city projects and smart city services can go one step further. You can have all these very low latency and high reliability new services. You can have IoT with devices and sensors everywhere in the city, and that will be made feasible thanks to 5G. But cities have another role to play, that is to be the area where dense networks are to be deployed. Cities will require very dense network, small cells in the millimeter bands, like Óscar presented it before. It's a clear case where cities and municipalities and local governments will have to play a key role in making this possible, in somehow removing the hurdles, the barriers that prevent these deployments from taking place, and making things coordinating on working in close cooperations with operators and other agents in order to make these rollouts possible, so that the cities can benefit from all these new capabilities that 5G technology promises us. And again, I'm very sorry for this delay. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you very much, and apologies again for the troubles that we have faced. Okay, well, now we have the roundtable session, so I have some questions. I got some questions from you. I am very happy and excited about the different expositions that we have. I am pretty sure that we will have key answers on these topics. So one of the questions that, for example, that it's being raised by the audience, which is now getting some votes, is, do you think that there is a risk of having different standards of 5G in different regions in the world? Maybe, Colin, you have a question on that since your expertise?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because as was highlighted in the first session, we have a situation where certain parts of the world are deploying now. And what one has to understand is that in terms of standardization, we just about have the first stable version, just about. And it takes at least 18 months to 2 years to go from the first stable version to a product. So what's being deployed today? How close what is being deployed today will be the final standard or the stable version? And what's being deployed today is only massive broadband. It's not including the massive IoT and the reliability and all those sort of things. And so there is a danger that we will have different versions of 5G deployed in different parts of the world. But in actual fact, it's not a disaster because luckily we're basing this on 3GP technology, and 3GPP technology is designed to have that forward and backward capability. So it doesn't mean that your handsets won't be working in US. Rather, what it will mean is certain capabilities of 5G will not be available perhaps in US to start with, and that certainly a software upgrade, and in the worst case a hardware upgrade will be needed to actually support full 5G on those first deployments.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has any other answer here. If not, we will proceed. So the idea is that now we are for people, so let's see if we can keep answers in 1 minute, and then we can follow up with more questions. So if you have to point out one of the advantages that 5G brings to citizens and cities, which one you would point? Óscar or Dani?
No, please.
There is an exploration of which will provide the 5G for the citizens and the cities. But in our case, one of the roles that we are analyzing will be a critical situation. It's in situations of emergency. Emergency response, police and firemen, and how the connectivity that all these emergency professionals and all the situation has with the security layers, with its license, and also with the connection with the critical infrastructure that they have. Security and activity response for emergency, it's one of the key issues for 5G, I think.
Okay, thank you.
For teenagers, online gaming. That's the killer app, probably. No, joking. No, not joking. That's true. That's probably the first app that will have a high demand. But I like very much a statement from our telecom general director at the Spanish government some weeks ago in Spain, in Madrid. He was saying that for the cities, generally speaking, he was talking about nationwide, but he said that for countries like Spain, probably, 5G is a kind of safety car on the Formula One. So everyone gets again the start position. So if any of the countries were somehow delayed, anything we can do now with 5G, it's an opportunity to get differentiated from the, let's say, the competitiveness point of view. I like quite a lot. So my sense is how much a city, a territory can really get skill specialized in those things which are really brilliant, and try to make something superb with the 5G enabling technology. That would be my point. So okay. Thinking in a city like this one, we have tourism, we have important automotive industry, we have mobility issues. So I think these would be the points where we will need to expertise on.
Thank you.
Well, in my view, one of the main advantages of 5G is that it's such a universal solution that it can adapt to the specifics of each city. So you can have a city where tourism is a great industry, for instance. Then you can develop services in use cases that have to do with tourism using augmented reality, virtual reality. There's a number of choices you can make. So it's true that it can gather everyone and put all of them at the same level, but still being respectful with the specific situation of each one, because you can have a city where traffic is a big problem, and you can make the most out of 5G in order to arrange traffic and make it more efficient. You can use IoT. You can have many choices. So that the good thing about this is that each city can work out its own problems and use 5G for that.
Okay. Colin, any comment here? Any
I
statement?
think the promise of 5G is that it can act as a unifying factor or system where it can then integrate all the other disparate ones we have today. So it's in that aspect, if we achieve that, where we pull together the healthcare, the water, the electricity, the automotive, the traffic, the air, everything. If we can pull that all together in a digital way, so we have a digital society and digital industry, that will be the change, not just for a few years, but in our lifetime. That will be the major disruption and change.
Good. Coming back to what you are stating now, and also checking some of the questions that we are getting here. There are many questions related about what's the city hall, the local government implications. But then I would come back to you with a question of, do you foresee any barrier on the 5G deployment? Or what do you think that could somehow slow down the plans that maybe private companies have, public institutions? What do you think there?
I think there are some barriers, absolutely. Probably one of the first barriers, delaying the 5G deployment, more than stopping, so probably delaying. But one of them, which is quite obvious, is that 4G still live and powerful. So still many capacity from the 4G networks. So the vendors' technology are providing really good features. So we can squeeze even more the macro concept with carrier aggregation, the massive MIMO, the beamforming. All these makes still a very good approach in terms of capacity and coverage from the macro, from the rooftop that we are familiar with, and probably delay somehow the deployment with this densification that we've seen. So this is for sure one of them. And secondly, at least, would be this new deployment of infrastructures in the city. So now we are accessing a different kind of assets, which is mostly street furniture. This is a public assets. We need to somehow make something rational, make efficient, mimetize this equipment. And of course, one of the principles from a neutral host approach, sharing these infrastructures. Now we are in a moment where where there's some commodities like coverage. That was not when 4G was deployed, because coverage was a competitive advantage, but probably those things which are now commodities are potentially to be shared amongst those providing final services. So this could be delayers more than stoppers.
Okay.
And I think that here the city hall or the public administration have a specific role to manage this governance with the private sector, to deal in a common agreement about the deployment of this infrastructure in their city, and to facilitate the deployment of the sharing infrastructures. I think that public administrations have a huge role, not only to facilitate that, also to define the path of the governance of this deployment model.
Good. Colin.
I mean, clearly there are a number of blocking factors on the, shall we say, the regulation side. So talking about spectrum, talking about global European rules and things like that. Clearly that's there, but I think what's perhaps a slightly more interesting thing that's blocking is using yesterday's business model for tomorrow's networks. And what I mean by that, if you look at the classical model today, what you have is you have a big operator, you have typically a big vendor behind that, you have single users, And that's worked very fine and well. But if we take a specific goal, let's say 2025, no one will die on European roads. Let's just take that as a mission and as a goal. And it can be done. The technology will allow that. The problem is, who's going to pay for it? It means we would need on every single road, at least every kilometre, a base station. Using the old model, well, why should the operators do that? They'll say, well, okay, where's the money for me in this? Okay, I save a few lives. I maybe have a few more subscribers because they haven't died in a car crash. That's not going to pay for it. We're talking billions of extra investment. And so the issue here is a funding model which doesn't take commercial profit as its motivation, but takes societal benefit as its motivation. And that's completely different. And that clearly needs to involve also the public side in investment. How can we combine the public and the private? How can we make that work?
Interesting challenge, by the way, who make it work.
Yes, we'll now get the answer. Excellent, sir.
No, you mentioned 4G, which is alive and kicking, and you've mentioned profitability. I think that's the key. So the sooner we find use cases that cannot be worked out by 4G and that make the business case one way or another, that will speed up 5G rollouts. If not, it's true that we'll have field trials, we'll have pilots, we'll have limited areas of coverage, but a wide deployment of the network, it requires that profitability that can only be provided by use cases that make a difference. Be it online gaming, that could very well be one of those. The entertainment industry is very important, and video is demanding of broadband, or be it any other. But we need those use cases that make the business case, and then it will speed up rollouts.
Good. Well, I think that we have seen that somehow public authorities here have a key role, and it's not going to be that easy to have all these things solved. Another question which is coming out from the audience, well, there are many making reference. I mean, there was one coming from the audience saying that what's going to be if 5G will make autonomous vehicles more economically viable or not. I mean, here one of the things is what Colin was saying, that it's not only about technology, it's about the business model. And we have to work a lot on how we improve this business model in order to allow the technology to evolve. Because then coming back to this, do you think that 4G will be absorbed? I mean, will 5G come into the market and it's going to become a must for the people to consume, which will overtake 4G, or will 4G networks last for a really long term until they are somehow finished? What do you think?
If we think about 2G, 3G, 4G, probably the first will disappear, going to be for sure 3G. That's clear. So somehow 3G introduced the mobile data connectivity, but just the flavor. Where we get really the nice experience was with 4G. So 4G will remains. Now 5G will introduce us something new, like ultra-low latency, reliability. I hope this is not only the flavor, and we need to expect for the 6G to make it a massive way. But I think from the telco industry, this is much more an evolution than a revolution. So an upgrade of the 4G. Someone already says that we are in the 4.5G era, before this pre-stage. So I think from the technology point of view, it's not going to be a so radical change. Although, of course, software is taking most of the control on the network that previously was supposed to be by hardware equipment. That's clear.
Okay, good.
I think that when we're talking about 5G, it's more about this disruption model. It's to change really the way that we are doing things. And then when these new areas of action with critical capabilities of technology that will be need to do any action, you were talking about remote vision. If you want to do remote vision with total security, with a long distance, you need this kind of technology. Then in these cases, it's a must. But in mainly of the use cases that we are trying to identify is only a better capability of the 4G technology. In these cases, will be a need or use case and a business case. But there are other cases that should be a must if we need to save life, or we need to provide more security, or we need to provide better economy for our sectors.
Okay.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I mean, 4G is not going away, but 4G also equally, the development of 4G will definitely slow down now. So new features are really going to be looked at in very much detail to see do they make any sense. So we have an existing footprint, we have an existing set of capabilities. That is pretty much where 4G is going to stay. In many ways, 5G is seen anyway as a combination of 4G and 5G. Most of the deployments in Europe won't work without the 4G core. But the change will be, exactly as you were saying, sir, when we look at new applications, where we look for the promise here, where things cannot be met by 4G, where there's millimeter wavelengths and things like this, that will not be 4G, that will only be 5G. So over time, 5G will not necessarily get rid of 4G, but will build on top of that and beyond that, and be then the most critical network we have.
Agree. Thanks.
Yes, I fully agree. 4G and 5G will coexist for quite a long time, at least until 4G capabilities are completely short of what is needed for the applications at the time. But there's a long way to that.
Okay, good. Well, I think that we are running out of time. I think that also people maybe want to have some lunch. We have been a bit delayed on the sessions today. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers that we have here in the panelists today, which very good speaking. And just to wrap up the session, I just wanted to give a few words. I think that we have been able to see the perspective or the activities that from the European Commission, Bernard were explaining of what is the challenge that we have ahead. We have also seen how different partnerships, I mean, the 5G PPP is an endeavor in order to ensure that things are happening. We have different trials, projects, and at some point we can see that 5G is a reality, which is the next challenge that we have in the next projects coming from the EC. Also the fact that it's very clear that one of the first hotspots, it's 5G will focus on the cities. So cities will change, and will not only change because of the technology, but will change also on the business models. And I think that we have put lots of effort on working on technology, and now maybe it's time to start working on how we monetize all the services or all the different solutions that will come out from the 5G ecosystem. Basically, in the end, there were also some comments with the fact that IoT plus artificial intelligence plus 5G will bring new applications and will impact directly at the edge of the networks. We have not been talking about mobile edge computing, but I think that's going to be a key topic for the area that we are dealing with. And also the fact that still the question whether the killer app is to come, or we have these critical services that will overcome the needs that 5G is bringing. So thank you very much to all of you for the participation, and looking forward to new actions on 5G. Thank you very much.